When we talk about toxic leadership, it's easy to think of it as just an HR problem, but it's not. It's a critical operational risk. It's like a poison that slowly seeps into every corner of a company, killing trust and choking innovation. But the good news is, like any poison, there's an antidote. So let's really dig into the true cost of this toxicity and how we can cure it.
Take a look at this number, 48%. What is that? Well, that's the drop in work effort that happens when you have a toxic leader. Almost half. Think about that for a second. That's nearly half of your team's potential just vanishing into thin air. That's a staggering cost no organization can afford to ignore. It hits everything from your day-to-day productivity right down to the bottom line.
So, what are we really talking about when we say toxic leadership? It's so much more than just being a bad boss. At its core, it's a selfish abuse of power. It's a style that systematically poisons relationships and thrives on fear and control. It's all about prioritizing a leader's own ego over the actual potential of the entire team.
And the fallout from this, well, it's just devastating. You see a direct line from this kind of leadership to a spike in psychological distress and burnout. It actually encourages counterproductive behavior, and it creates this deep, pervasive sense of job dissatisfaction that can absolutely cripple a team's morale and its output.
Okay, so we've talked theory, but what does this actually look like in the real world? It's one thing to define it, but it's another to see it in action. So let's walk through a quick case study that makes these warning signs crystal clear.
Let's talk about a manager. We'll just call him George. Now, George is under a ton of pressure. His team's numbers are bad, so what's his first move? Does he analyze the strategy? Look at the process? Nope. He decides to create a scapegoat. He's going to find someone on his team to blame for the poor results. That's your first classic flashing red light of toxicity. So George calls in his loyal manager, Susan. Now, Susan's been trying to tell him what needs to change, offering real solutions. But he hasn't been willing to listen. He shuts down any feedback she offers. And this, right here, is the second big toxic sign. He ignores her solutions and instead tells her they need to fire 2 people to send a message. But it's a message of fear, not improvement.
And this is where we hit the third sign, pure deceit. George actually manipulates Susan into firing a really valuable, high-performing employee named Steve. And the moment she's done the deed, George fires her, too. In the end, it was a massive, costly lesson for the company. They eventually fired George, rehired both Susan and Steve, and guess what? They went on to set all-time records. You see, a leader like George doesn't exist in a bubble. His actions create an entire culture. And a key symptom of that poisoned culture is something we call backbiting. Talking negatively about a colleague who isn't there to defend themselves. This is exactly how the poison spreads from just one toxic leader to infect an entire team. All right, so we've spent some time diagnosing the problem. Now, let's talk about the cure. We're going to start with the first essential antidote, which is a true leadership superpower, the empathy imperative. And let me be clear, this is not a soft skill, it's an absolute strategic necessity. And this chart just lays it out perfectly. You can see the difference clear as day, right? A toxic culture runs on fear, self-interest, blame, and manipulation. But an empathetic culture, that's built on a foundation of psychological safety, mutual respect, real accountability, and authenticity. One system tears people down, the other builds them up. It's that simple. And if you're looking for the business case for empathy, look no further. The data is just undeniable. We're talking an 86% boost in morale, a 76% increase in engagement, a 61% rise in creativity. These aren't just feel-good metrics. These are serious drivers of performance and innovation. Okay, so be empathetic. Sounds great, right? But what does that actually look like day to day? Well, empathetic leaders, they actively listen without judgment. They genuinely seek to understand the unique challenges their people are facing. They create psychological safety, lead with real integrity, and, this is a big one, they aren't afraid to admit their own mistakes. That's how you build trust. But here's the thing. Empathy on its own isn't quite enough. It needs a powerful partner in action. And that brings us to our second antidote, the empowerment advantage. This is the force that truly unlocks human potential and makes an organization resilient against toxicity. Empowerment. It's a word we hear a lot, but what does it really mean?
It is not just about delegating tasks. It's a fundamental shift in the power dynamic. It's about truly entrusting your people with the autonomy, the resources, and the trust they need to do their best work. It turns them from passive employees into active owners of their success.
And when you do this, the results are just incredible. Suddenly, you're unlocking creativity because people feel safe to take smart risks. You're building deep collaborative trust. You're championing diversity and inclusion because every single employee feels like they have a voice. An empowered workforce is, by its very nature, a resilient workforce. Okay, we've covered a lot, the what and the why. So now for the how. I want to give you something really practical. A simple tool that any leader can start using the second this is over to actively fight toxicity and build a much healthier culture.
It actually comes from some ancient wisdom, from Socrates of all people. But wow, is it relevant today? It's called the triple filter test, and it's an incredibly powerful, simple mental model for elevating conversations at work and basically starving that culture of backbiting we talked about.
It's super simple. Here's how it works. Before you share a piece of information about a colleague, just pause. Ask yourself 3 quick questions. First, is it true? Am I absolutely certain of this? Second, is it good? Is it something positive or at least constructive? And third, is it useful? Is there a real productive reason for me to share this? If the answer to any of those is no, the best thing to do is just stay silent.
At the end of the day, it all comes down to a choice. Every action you take, every conversation you have, every decision you make, it's all contributing to the environment around you. So the real question isn't if you're building a culture, you are. The question is, which one are you building? The choice is yours.